Hello, everyone. It is 2 o'clock Central Time, and we had an appointment at 2 o'clock. Welcome to session 4 of the MAPS Language of Sales program. I am so glad you're here and that you're part of this class. And I'm here to support you and your development and new ways to communicate and influence that are, well, quite frankly, appropriate to the way we communicate in today's world. In the MAPS Language of Sales, we're going to work with you on the art of sharing words and ideas, as you know, in a scientific, structured way that will allow you to raise your influence as a speaker while simultaneously supporting the listener in achieving his or her goal. It's clear that you're already starting to realize that the more focused you become on your effective communication and your effective use of language, well, the more you realize that what you have to learn. And isn't this the exact reason you're in language of sales? My guess is it's why a lot of you are here, right? To be more effective. So let's take a look as everybody's joining today. Welcome back from the holidays. I am so excited to hear how our homework played out over what I would call the holiday break. You know, MAPS was on vacation for a couple of weeks. I'm hearing from a lot of my one-on-one clients that they really did take some downtime and took some time off. So as most of you know by now, my name is Kara Mall, and I've been a transformational coach with MAPS for, well, now almost 8 years. I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, and I'm an IPEC certified energy leadership coach, an EQ certified master practitioner, that's emotional intelligence, and I'm a head coach within our MAPS ecosystem. I've had the honor and privilege of teaching this class. I love this class for the past 4 years. And as many of you know, because I've shared it before, this was the very first program I took when I came to Keller Williams, and the very first MAPS program I took. And I'm 100% honest when I tell you, I use this stuff every day. I use it in my real life. I use it in my coaching life. I use it in my sales life. I use it in my life. I'm excited for the MAPS Language of Sales because it incorporates some of the greatest communication tools known, with the lessons and experience of some powerful leaders and agents who know how to move people into action. It really does tap into that art and science, right? The scale, the art and science, to systematically teach you as a participant a brand new language. So most of you already know how this works, and I'm going to go over it quickly with you again. I mean, I believe at this point in time, we're all Zoom experts, whether we want to be or not. You're going to use the chat box when you have a question or to answer any of the questions that I may ask of the group. And you can also use the raised hand feature throughout the call when I actually ask you to participate. We find it's much easier than everybody talking at once and stepping on each other. Just hit your raise hand. It'll pop you up on my screen. I'll see who you are, and you can share with us in a little bit. We'll do that at the end too when we have our Q&A. And you know, today is going to be one of those days where I'm going to call on some of you and ask you to verbally participate and do it live. So let's see, housekeeping. As in the past, all of these calls are recorded. You probably already know that. In fact, put in the chat box if over the break you went back and re-listened to one of our first 3 calls at any point in time. Go ahead and put in the chat box if you listen to some. So there's quite a few. I know I was getting tagged in homework on the Facebook group. A lot of you went back and listened, and I think that's phenomenal. And now remember this, you're going to have access to those recordings for 60 days after the end of this session. We're going to be done the first week of February. That'll be our last call. And then you'll have it for 60 days after. So roundabout, I would mark your calendar for right around February, March, April 1st to go back. If you were really smart and really wanted to take advantage of this class, what you do is mark your calendar and block off time for every Thursday after we get done with this, same time, 2:00 Central Time, and repeat the class. Do it again. Why? Because you're not going to be the same person then that you are right now. And the more repetition you have, the more you learn, the greater the impact you are going to have on your skills and helping other people. So that being said, you've invested in yourself and in a program that MAPS offers. And frankly, I'm excited to work with you in an area that is my passion. Powerful language. I love that everybody's jumping on and saying hi, howdy from everywhere across the country. I know there's a lot of, I was going to say weather happening. Duh. We have weather everywhere, right? Some less than weather that we'd want. So I'm glad that you're here and that you're tuning in, everybody that's here. So let's take a look at what we're going to accomplish this session. First and foremost, we're going to review our growth commitment, right? Or our homework. We're going to go over the information from not the past week, from the past couple weeks, and share some sentences, have you share them around awareness and automatic presuppositions. From there, we're going to discuss your observations of rapport. And I'm going to ask a couple of you to raise your hands and share your instances and circumstances where you built or maybe you broke rapport. We had the holidays. We were with family. Want to hear about these things. We're going to be then expanding your use of rapport through the use of something called keyword backtracking and identifying a listener's VAK. And you'll hear what that is a little later on today. And then we'll talk about how to effectively use embedded commands to get a listener to take action and move forward. And then lastly, we're going to cover your growth mastery work for the week. So let's get started. And I have to say, you guys are all teasing me because I'm seeing so many people from down south on this call today, where it's nice and warm. So I'm so glad you're all here. The first thing that we're going to talk about in our growth work is we asked you to write 5 awareness presupposition sentences a day for 5 days out of the week, or a collective of 25 sentences, and you were going to underline the presupposition. Now, remember, awareness presuppositions are when you imply that you're aware of a certain thing, you're just aware of it, and that it will immediately draw the listener's attention to that particular thing. You're taking the focus off of the subject and redirecting it to where or why. We're redirecting their focus to where or why something is that way. They presume that a person was aware of something that wasn't there before. And when used properly, awareness presuppositions create a new reality that can impact the decision-making and the behavior of the listener. So if any resistance is experienced when you're using this technique, awareness presuppositions, it's going to happen around the level of awareness and not the actual message you're communicating. And that's pretty cool. So in your manual from last week, you have the examples, and I call it you've got them here, the cheat sheet box, right? That I always have in front of me. And that, by the way, this comes right out of my manual that I keep with me. It's a fresh copy that I printed for today. And there are words like begin, beginning, become aware, pay attention, already, you're experiencing, I'm sensing, I'm sure you're discovering, I know you realize, assume. And think about this. Before I have you share some of your sentences, remember to keep in mind that we use awareness presuppositions to direct someone's attention to what you'd like them to focus on, right? What we want them to focus on. And that, here's the key. And you might want to write this down somewhere. It's essential that you keep in mind it must be about creating a win-win situation. right? It has to be about a win-win situation. Because if it's not, that's that little word starts with M, ends in manipulation, right? And none of us want to engage in manipulation. That's when we have someone do something that they don't want to do. Everything we're talking about in this course is how to get that listener to move towards what they want, what their goal is. So here's the steps. And remember, like many of the things that I'm teaching you in this class, this is the science part. It's formulaic. You've got your list of words that we're going to use, and you're going to do two things with the steps. You're going to decide which decision, action, belief that you want to introduce to someone, right? We're going to decide what they want them to focus on. And then we're going to introduce that idea using one of our presuppositions. So let's go ahead and see some of your sentences. This is where you guys are going to start to type. Go ahead and use the question box to share. And as always, feel free to be ready to write when you go back and listen to this. The nice thing about these being recorded is you can literally build an entire library of sentences for yourself, of a manual for yourself with all of this information if you go back and take the time to write down the sentences. Now, while you guys are all typing your sentences in the box, your examples of awareness presuppositions, I'm going to share something with you, because one of the questions, and Jody, you fed right into it. Thanks, girl. It would be nice to have the chats downloaded and put in the Facebook page. Here's the thing. You know what happens if we give it to you? Nothing. It's the fact that you would take that information, take the time, sit down for an hour, rewrite the things, retype the things. That's when you're going to absorb it and learn it. So it's not about seeing the comments, which I think we can download and perhaps share. It's really about the activities that you are doing and participating in. So I'm getting a lot of people asking for copies of people's homework. Where's your homework, peeps? Let's put your sentences in the box. So Dan, thanks so much. Perhaps by now you're considering that we may be able to help you. I love that. Amanda, notice how fast homes get listed. Notice, right, in your neighborhood. Notice how fast homes that get listed in your neighborhood are going under contract. So it makes sense to list now. Look at that. You directed them to notice how fast they were selling. Now, are they? Maybe. Did that person know that? Probably not. That's a great sentence, Amanda, because most people don't know how quickly things go under contract, right? Because what do? As agents, we put that sign in the yard, and it sits there. And in some markets, they do put under contract or anything. I know one of the markets I'm in, that's not very common in our market, where you don't see that because you want to still be able to get sign calls. You want to get things like that. So people might say, well, that sign's been out there forever. Things are taking a while to sell, and they're really not. So what do we have next? I'm gonna scroll up a bit so that I can see some of these. So Janet Johnson said, knowing how this home meets all your check boxes, I'm sure you'll feel comfortable moving forward. Love that. And I could just hear someone saying that as we go through the market information, notice how limited active inventory is, and it will become very clear why now is the time to sell. Naturally, you're feeling a sense of urgency to get pre-approved and buy now with the way the market's appreciating. You'll begin to notice the number of sold signs in your neighborhood. And what many sellers are discovering is that listing in the wintertime only attracts serious buyers. Love these. Great job, everyone. Continue to work on these. And again, one of the most important things that I cannot stress to you enough is it's one thing to write your sentences. It's a completely different one to use them. Use them in your conversations. Practice them out loud. Once we approach the house, you'll begin to discover the pond in the backyard. The only way these sentences are going to begin to be comfortable for you is when you automatically start using them. If you've been practicing with a practice partner, 2 thumbs up. If you haven't been, now's the time to do that. Go to the Facebook page. I saw people over the break looking for people who, accountability partners, practice partners. You learn to speak a new language by actually speaking it, not just writing it. Angela has a great suggestion in the box, and I would agree with that. Record them in a voice memo and listen to them. Call your voicemail, listen to it. Go on Zoom, record yourself doing it, and listen to the recording and re-say it over and over and over. It's the power of the unconscious mind. If you listen to my holiday call on habits for MAPS, you know how powerful that is. So great job on the awareness presuppositions. So let's take a look at the next part of our homework, and that was automatic presuppositions. And they imply that something's automatically going to happen whether or not the listener wants it to, right? They start with words like automatically, naturally, continuously, instinctively, effortlessly, logically, consciously, involuntarily. I would love to challenge someone to use involuntarily in a sentence regarding real estate. Involuntarily, you're going to write a contract. I would love to see who comes up with that. I'm going to put that as my mystery challenge for this week on the Facebook page. Who can come up with a automatic presupposition sentence that uses the word involuntarily? So go ahead, use the box and share a sample of one of your automatic presuppositions. And Colleen said, I noticed in meditation, they use lots of automatic presuppositions. Absolutely. When you're talking about meditation, I think you're talking about guided meditations where they're telling you, yep, it's exactly because it talks to the unconscious mind. Go back to one of the first things we talked about in one of our very first sessions about the internal representation, right? The IR. The IR is what lives in the unconscious. And we ask powerful questions to get that IR out. Make no mistake, though, that IR is always listening. So let's look at some of the sentences. Naturally, you'll get more excited as we move through. A lot of naturallys. You will involuntarily use the right words when you practice your scripts and dialogues. Ding, 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 ding. That's one. You want to see you use involuntarily with regards to actually buying or selling a house. Michael, when buyers see that your home is on the market for a long period of time, they involuntarily make below market offers. Ooh, I like it. And yet that's talking about what someone else is going to do, not the listener. So remember, when we're using these presuppositions, it's to direct our listener to do something. So let's see. All right. Now, here's the thing. Keep posting this. If you have any questions on awareness presuppositions, automatic presuppositions, instinctively, go to the website, our Facebook page, and share. And I'll be happy, tag me in it. I'm happy to critique. And typically what I do, just so you guys know, I look at everything. If you guys are doing okay, I usually give it a thumbs up. I'll give it an emoji. I'll do something like that. No, if I post something and make a correction, it's because I know you're there to get better and you want to learn. And sometimes, we're doing this, we're doing it quickly, and you do want to learn things the right way, don't you? So I appreciate that every single one of you is open to feedback. So let's move on to just remind everybody again that this is so important, that we're never using this to manipulate or fool a person. It's to guide them to the effective use of the information that we have available to us. You're going to very easily break rapport if you do it in a way, if you use these presuppositions in a way that is not in the best interest of the client. Right? And how do we know if it's in the best interest of the client? It's because we've asked them We've asked them questions. We know what they want. We know what their motivation is. We know their motivational strategy. And now we're crafting our language, how to help them get what they want. So speaking of rapport, I asked you over the break to consciously focus on building rapport with every care call you made. I know some of you made care calls or lead generation calls, appointments you went on. I'm even going to extend this to family. We were together with family. We were together at family gatherings. So what I'd first like to hear is a phone example. If you've got a great experience that you had with matching someone rapport wise over the phone, I'd love for you to hit that little raise hand at the bottom of your screen, and I'd love to bring you on and you can share. Or if you don't feel, if you didn't primp yourself properly today and you just like to share in the box too, that's just fine. Go ahead and you can either raise your hand and share, and we'll put you on screen and we'll take you off of mute, or put something in the box of where you were able to mirror and match someone over the phone. And we've got Christina. Christina, let's go ahead and share your experience of rapport over the phone.
So I am a life coach with KW, and I got matched with a client, and we were having difficulty connecting because she got ill, but then we finally did connect, and we had a great rapport once we were able to finally connect. And because of the rapport that we had, it was instantaneous, actually. She was able to open up and share in terms of her goals and what she wanted to get out of her coaching sessions. And so it was really exciting and fun.
So Christina, I'm going to ask you as someone who was able to build that rapport, what did you have to pull out of your tool bag, if you will, to be able to build that rapport? Based on how we talked about building rapport last week with mirroring and matching, how were you able to do that?
Well, basically, I looked at her sheet in terms of what she said her objectives were. And I mentioned that back to her. And I simply just asked her, tell me more, and listen. And basically It was her talking and not me doing so much talking, and just provided that safe space for her, listened to her, and then asked her what she would need in moving ahead, what it was that she needed and what her expectations were for herself. And the more that I asked powerful questions, the more she just kind of just opened up.
The rapport happened.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Christina, for sharing with us. So I know, Jeanette, you posted in the chat box that you had some Zoom consultations and you found yourself paying attention to how they're sitting and that you're doing the same thing yourself. Right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. It's being able to mirror and match them. I think that right now many agents think, old school, at the kitchen table, they go to take a drink. I go to touch my glass, and I've got my glass of water right here. That's why I'm doing that over there. Or, someone's sitting with their arms crossed, and you're thinking that you've got a screen in front of you that you can do the same thing. And it doesn't have to be, one for one. If they're going like this, you don't have to go, let me do this. Or if someone's sitting really close, you probably want to get a little closer to the screen. If they're sitting further away, you might want to get a little further away. If there's two of them huddled in there, you probably want to huddle in with them. So this does not only work in person. It is a great tool to work on video as well. I really want to hear from someone though, who had an experience with verbal that really, when you called someone, you mirrored and matched. You might even do this and not realize. Oh, who's raising their hand? Who is Cheryl? Cheryl, go ahead and share with everybody.
Okay, so mine was actually in a position where I think we've all been through it too. It was in a part where both parties were getting very emotional. I shared this story with you earlier. Basically, we had builders have been behind, and we're getting ready to go to a close. And these people have to close because their rate lock's going to go out. It's going to raise up. I'm going to make it short. Well, emotions at that point, 4 months into it, she's going to be homeless with 2 kids. The builder can't get his suppliers in there. Everything's gone to chaos. Everybody been there before? Yeah. Emotions going on both sides. So bottom line is we need this project manager because if he doesn't get the CO in that night, they won't close tomorrow and it's end of year. Okay. Homeless, no kids, no place to go. So long story short is we were able to communicate with the project manager who's basically saying, I'm going home. I'm going to go home to my kids. I don't appreciate you yelling at me. And we've been nice through the whole process, but she had to vent a little bit. And we went back and we were able to sit there for 5 to 10 minutes and say, please don't take this personal. This is someone who needed to say what you need to say. We're all trying to work toward that same goal. We need you to stay here because he's shut down.
I love that, Cheryl.
They're walking out.
I love that, Cheryl. And thanks for sharing that, because I know from our experience working together, Cheryl and I work together. She's one of our Great Maps clients. She was mirroring and matching the tonality of the mom who was going to be homeless with her kids, and then cleared and took that and went over and was able to mirror and match that of the project manager to say, I've got it. How do we make this happen? We have to get this through. So thanks for sharing that. So Lisa Allen, we're going to go one more. Tell us about how you used verbally matching someone's tone.
So we had a referral for some clients that are in California, and the husband and I had been texting back and forth about a time to, the best time to talk and communicate. He was very responsive, very quick, and sounded energetic and all of that through text, right? And he says, hey, I'm going to have you talk with my wife, right? And so the day that we're set to have our phone conversation, I'm all like, kind of had been matching his tone. And she gets on, well, I'm just not sure. I think we're thinking this. And well, Lisa, I just don't know. And so it really meant that I had to slow down because clearly the husband was deferring and saying, listen, she's going to be your person. And so it was not about his and my energy that was matching. I had to go, all right, let's take a little calm approach. Yes.
Right. You had to pivot, and kudos to you for doing that. And that's another situation where, thank you for sharing, Lisa, where many times we work with a couple, two people in a transaction on the same side of the table. And one of them, and maybe in my house, this is going to be shocking to most of you. One of us is like the talker, the more animated, the one that's out there. And the other one's kind of the quiet, reserved one. And at any point in time, we're each a decision maker for things. But in order to build rapport with my husband, you're going to have to talk differently than you would to build rapport with me. So, and people will always say, well, if there's 2 people sitting there, how do I know? You're going to mirror and match the person you're talking to at that moment. So if it's a presentation and there's 2 of them, well, maybe you're talking a little fast during something and looking at the one who talks faster, and then you slow it down and you talk to the other one, and then you speed it up and you slow it down. Remember, art and science. It takes practice. And look at Tyler. I've done it before. I've gotten the listing. I know you have, buddy. So if any of you really want to get good at this, again, record your calls, record your presentations. Somebody said, well, how can I record my calls? We all have Zoom. We have free Zoom. We can record on Zoom, put your phone on speaker, keep it here and record yourself on Zoom, and you can hear, you can go back and listen. There are so many different ways to to help you build an even better skill set and for your tool bag. So awesome job. And by the way, that doesn't stop just because that's not your growth work for this week. Every single one of these things build on each other. This course is structured to build on each other, to build on the steps. Any of these things stand on their own, and yet when you're using automatic and awareness presuppositions, well, it would be important to talk with the same tone and inflection that they have, mirroring and matching them. So at this point, you all have probably figured out, or I should say all y'all, if for those of you down in Texas, have figured out that you've been invited to participate in your transformation game. And you're automatically realizing that who you are and your ability to powerfully use language transforms the people and the experience of the people that are in your presence. So think about this. How important is it that you build trust? You know, I'm sure you'll agree that building trust is the foundation of any great relationship. For instance, you can build trust with your clients and allow them to believe what you say, just as you get to believe what I say as we go through this program together. It's a choice. You can believe it. We'd also like you to consider that language is just a series of words unless you're actually in alignment with them. Think about that. Language is just a series of words unless you're in alignment with them. And your language, and if your language and your actions are not congruent, well, your effectiveness is going to be impacted significantly. So there are two ways to allow people to trust what you say. And you want to give them that feeling of being understood, right? You already know the first because we discussed it back in session 2, and that's to listen intently. You're going to hear tonality, and you're going to, and I know you agree that that's important. Now, today we're going to be talking about the second way, and that is keyword backtracking. And again, everything that you see on the screen at this point is in your workbook. The things in purple that are underlined, those are your fill in the blanks. So we're going to focus on the second, which is keyword backtracking, which is using and repeating the words that others use and speak. Using and repeating what others use and speak. So how does that work? Well, as I mentioned, you listen intently and then selectively use their words back to them. Well, if they use the word awesome, well, you go, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. You use it back to them. If they say something like, I heard it's not really a good time to sell, you use your skills from session 1, you acknowledge and validate and reply. And it might sound like, I hear you and I appreciate what you're saying, and you might be right. When is a good time to sell? Right? It's not a good time to sell. When is a good time to sell? Saying, I hear you and I appreciate what you're saying allows them to feel heard and understood. You guys remember this from acknowledging and validating. And actually using their words, good time to sell, well, that's the keyword backtracking part. They may have put it in a context of a negative. You're flipping it around to move them into action. It puts you in alignment with them. Our language allows us to align. So back in 1920, which is weird to think that was 100 years ago. None of us were here. A group of psychologists developed what we call the VAK learning styles model, the VAK learning styles model to represent a person's primary referential system. That's a lot of big words. I get it. And it's basically to understand how different people interpret the world. So let's look at that. It's their primary referential system, their point of reference. So visual is sight, auditory, sound, kinesthetic, touch, feel. So sight, sound, and touch. So based on what we've learned so far in MAPS language of sales and the fact that you're that you, me, all of us are committed to respecting another's model of the world and meeting other people where they are, it can be helpful to recognize your listeners' VAK by paying close attention to the language that they use. Then, when you use that language that's in alignment with their VAK, well, you're going to communicate to them in a way that will naturally make sense. Ding, 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 ding. That's rapport. Your words will literally create a feeling of sameness and comfort, which is that building block of rapport. So let's take a deeper look at what the three primary referential systems are and the language that's associated with each. So if someone has a visual, and again, you should have this box of all these words in your workbook. Someone with a visual learning style, they're going to absorb and retain information better when it's presented in a picture, a diagram, or charts. It's very important to know that, right? If it's visual, they want to see it. 80% of the population, give or take, prefers a visual learning style. So when in doubt, use visual words. A visual learning style probably loves these Zoom meetings and being able to actually see examples on the screen. So the person who makes sense of the world visually, they're going to use words like these: examine, analyze, illustrate, obvious, show, light, that whole list of words there for you to look at. So take a moment and look at your workbook, or look on the screen if you're one of those visual people and you like doing that. And there's going to be, if you are a visual in nature, there's going to be a word or two that jumps out at you, and circle that word. It's one that you may hear or use often. And if you want, share it in the box. And Christina, keyword backtracking is using and repeating the words others use. And let me give you the exact answer. All right, imagine, speak, notice. Christina, I will get you that answer by the end of the call. Okay. I can't go back right now. So let's see. Speak, picture. Okay. The word speak. All right, we're only looking at the visual box right now. Is the word speak on the visual box, guys? No. So, but I can tell who my auditory people are. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking to you next. So think of phrases like this. When you're talking to someone who's visual, I can picture them using phrases like, I can see myself, the focus of our meeting. It appears that. Let's examine. So do you see how those are all visual words? So here's an example of a sentence. Just envision your family gathered here for the holidays. Just envision your family gathered here for the holidays. So now we're gonna take some turns. You're gonna look at the words in the box, and I want you to come up with one sentence that uses a visual word. You've got a visual client to set an appointment. So think about it. Write a sentence or a part of a sentence. This is all hypothetical. So go ahead and share in the box an example that a visual communicator would relate to. Dan, out of the box, let's get together and we can create some clarity about your next home, right? Clarity, a visual word. Imagine how much fun it'll be when we can get out and look at houses. If you dream about your new house, the outlook is promising. They're scrolling very quick, so that's why I'm reading partial. Let's clarify. Let's meet to talk, to look at houses, right? I mean, think about that. It's as simple as that. It's using a word picture. Just picture what it's going to be like when we're out there looking at houses. Watch what's going to happen when you step inside your next house. I can't wait to observe how you react to this next property. So think about that. Now, you know that this is going to be part of your growth work. So the key to this is going to be using a lot of different words. You don't want to become a parrot. You don't want to keep using the same word over and over and over again. The point of this is to use different words to connect with someone in a way that makes sense to them. So think about this. Remember that once you identify the listener's VAK, you'll adjust your communication style to meet their communication style. And you can, so let me say that again. You'll adjust your communication style to meet their communication style, and you can see how someone who is looking for clarity through visual cues can envision a clearer picture when you illustrate your point using visual context words. I'd say go back and count how many, but there were a lot in there. So if you're a visual learner right now, you're probably on the edge of your seat going, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is awesome. So let's talk next about the auditory peeps, people who like hearing. Someone with an auditory learning style prefers hearing what is being presented. They tend to respond best to voices and learning from maybe group discussions. With auditory communicators, repeating back and using keyword backtracking, it is a super effective tool for them because they like to hear, right? They're probably the ones that are on the Zoom right now that don't have their picture up. They're listening, right? So a person who makes sense of the world through things that are auditory uses words like these: enunciate, communicate, ring, speak, speechless, squeal, state, noise, earshot, pronounce, announce. So this is going to be fun. Let's go ahead now. And well, let me first give you a couple examples. I can hear them communicating with phrases like, that sounds perfect, right? Simple. That sounds perfect. Let's talk about it. I hear you loud and clear. That one actually had two, hear and loud. Not to mention. So here's an example of a great sentence for an auditory learner. Now remember, our visual sentence was, just envision your family gathered for the holidays. Here's our auditory. Can you just hear the laughter of your family as they gather for the holidays? Now, I know that resonated with some of you on the call. So let's do an auditory example for Melody. Let's go ahead and thank you. Let's do a auditory example for negotiating an offer. You're negotiating an offer with someone, and just go ahead and create a quick little sentence or a part of a sentence that will be effective with an auditory communicator. And go ahead and share it in the box. Let's make sure to set the right tone with this first offer. Tell me your thoughts on this counter. I'm speechless that you're willing to offer that much or not offer enough, right? Let's see what I hear you saying. You mentioned a number. Can we talk about it? You guys, these are awesome for like off the top of your head. These are really, really, really great sentences. Tell me about a time when you heard that still small voice tell you the offer was too low. Gotcha. All right. So still got it. Let's discuss how I can help you discuss how, yep. No appraisal gap clause shouts that you aren't a serious buyer. This is awesome. So when you hear of an auditory communicator, these are the types of things you want to say to them. So again, as you do your growth for this week, mix it up. So now, clearly at some point in time, I accidentally hit the screen and we jumped ahead to kinesthetic. Let's talk about a kinesthetic VAK person. Their learning style prefers a physical experience. a physical experience. They like a hands-on approach, and they respond well to being able to learn while doing or having a feel for what's being presented. So the person who makes sense of the world through kinesthetic, they're going to use words like the ones that are on the screen now: active, feel, hassle, motion, sore, heated, panicky, pressure, hold, hunch, hustle, sensitive. They're going to use phrases like, I want to stress that, or let's get a concrete plan in place. It's a difficult concept to grasp. Let's touch base. Kinesthetic, all have to do with feeling, something tactile. Here's an example of a great sentence for that kinesthetic learner. Can you feel the excitement as your family gathers for the holidays? So we've seen them sitting at the table, we've heard their laughter, and now can you feel the excitement? Every one of them is a powerful sentence when used with the listener who it resonates with most. So now it's your turn. Non-business situation. Non-business situation. Non-business situation, use the words, type them in the box. Ian, how do you discern the person's style? You listen. You listen to the words they use. They're going to tell you. They're going to tell you through their words. How would you feel if we didn't go to your parents tonight? How can we stand another week of isolation? I'm sensitive to your needs in this relationship. These are great. I'm just going to throw this out there as kind of a yellow flag. Can I support you? How, Carol, make that powerful? How can I support you? Can I support you as a yes or no? How I can opens the door for them to communicate. Love it. How am I going to feel when I reach my home after I leave this class? Your intuition said it was going to be a great relationship, and it is. Imagine how active, right? Let's touch base. The cool down period. I love this. All right. So what I want to warn you with this is this probably more than others, you're going to tend to default to a word like feel. So when you're doing your growth work this week, look at different ways to use other VAKs. Okay. So let me just ask you this as we move on. Who has a hunch they'll use this? How does it sound to you? Who can see themselves using this technique? There you go. Every one of those sentences asks the same question, and yet it hits different people in different ways. So congratulations to all of you for catching on to what I just did. And by paying attention to the VAK, you're entering the world of advanced communication skills. Now, during the time that you're lead generating and pre-qualifying an appointment, taking notes on the words that they use can easily and effortlessly help you make sense of how they communicate and what's going on in their world. Feeding words and phrases in their preferential reference system, like by using things like keyword backtracking, it's going to aid you in building efficiency around your business. And I'm sure that's making sense to you. So many of you may recognize the next language pattern. We got a twofer today as something from Bold or your previous language of sales experience. And it's so exciting. And it's one of my favorites. And it's embedded commands. Woo, embedded commands. So they can truly be one of the most powerful tools you can use. And I'm sure that some of you are already thinking, I already know this part. I know embedded commands. And your mind is going to attempt to take you somewhere else. And I'm going to ask you to stay focused and pay attention, because I'm also sure that you're not using them with mastery. When using embedded commands, you're automatically and effortlessly move beyond the client's conscious resistance. You can easily impact their response, understanding, and their willingness to move in a desired direction. And we use them to actually make suggestions to the mind of the listener at a deeper level than the words that are coming out that they're hearing on the surface. So what exactly are embedded commands? Well, in your book and on the screen, embedded commands are a series of words that stand alone to make a command to the unconscious mind of the listener. They stand alone to make a command to the unconscious mind of the listener. They're words and phrases enclosed or embedded within a larger context. They're phrases that can stand alone and often have impact beyond that which is apparent or intended by the context in which they appear. So most embedded commands work so effectively because they seem almost invisible through the embedded process, and they operate for the most part on an unconscious level, which makes it highly unlikely that there's any resistance or rub by the listener. That's right. Since they operate beneath the level of the listener's consciousness and their conscious awareness, the person typically responds with no resistance. And when used properly, embedded commands give the listener's unconscious mind thoughts to focus on and process at a later time, which causes them to voice those ideas as if they had thought of them on their own, or to act on the commands or the suggestions that you gave them and embedded earlier. You literally become the little voice inside their head. And for those who are parents, think of it like speaking with your children. You repeat something over and over and over until it becomes a belief. And this week, you're going to use embedded commands when you speak, so you'll be more persuasive when influencing others to make decisions. There were just about 4 of them right there. The reason embedded commands are effective is they're analogically marked in your language, and in your workbooks and on the slide, here's how we structure them. Okay. So you're going to begin a sentence and then utilize, I need to move everybody's faces. You guys are they're all beautiful. This is just in your workbook. So let's go with it there. So how to structure written embedded commands. You're going to begin the sentence, and then you're going to utilize an ellipsis, which is also known as a ... before. You're going to write the embedded command in all capital letters, and then you're going to use another ellipsis, another ... afterwards. So when you write them, the way you write them, ... all capitals, ... Angela, you got it almost. The choose me would be all caps, right? Because that's the command. That's the command part. When you verbalize them, you're going to pause, because what does that ... mean? The ellipsis means pause. You're going to pause before the embedded command. You're going to say the command louder than the rest of the sentence. You're going to use a downswing at the end of command because it's a command. It's not a question. And then you're going to finish the sentence. So let's review some embedded commands. And so in your book, you've got the whole list of embedded commands. Feel good. Do it today. Reduce your price. Get excited. Trust me. Feel comfortable. Accept the offer. You get the picture. There's lots of them. Are there more than this? Oh yeah, there's a lot more. You can create anything. It's an embedded command. So as you can imagine, there are many, many possibilities for embedded commands. I'm going to ask you to use your creativity in your growth work assignment this week to create more embedded commands and use them to create powerful sentences and enhance your business and get results. Let's go a little deeper and clarify the concept of embedding for everyone. So to embed a command or suggestion, it's necessary to make it a part of a sentence that contains a lead in and a lead out. So for example, the list your home with me, well, that certainly is a command, but it's simply a sentence. It's a command. It's not embedded. Or it's not suggesting. You're telling someone to do something, right? You're telling them to list their home with you. Embedded commands or suggestions, although they're direct, are softer in their approach because they're preceded with that lead-in phrase and a lead-out phrase. So an example of using the previous command and embedding it would look something like this. Let me take a swallow for a second. So when you list your home with me, you'll automatically notice how my proactive process creates results that exceed the efforts of other agents. So when you go back and listen to this, you'll notice that I ever so slightly paused. I emphasized list your home with me. I paused again and then went on. It takes practice. Verbal is going to be key. So there's an easy test to see, because one of the things where people get hung up on embedded commands, one of the big things is they will make a statement, but it's not an embedded command. So here's the test. So pay attention to this next part. If you were to shout the command at someone out loud and that person would understand exactly what you want them to do, well, then you're commanding them to do it, then you're using it the right way. Now, that's not what we're going to do, but that's the way we're going to set the sentence up. When you're practicing these things verbally this week, overemphasize, be louder. When you list your home with me, you'll automatically notice, because what's going to happen is when you start to use them in real life, you're naturally going to pull back. So if you practice louder, they're going to have the effect that you want them to have. So let's look at just an example or two. These are all in your book. We're going to have our office hours this week. We'll let you know when they are. We'll post them in the Facebook group. And you're going to be doing examples of embedded commands for your growth work. So what I want to do right now is just give you a couple of these samples. So here's one. What's the best time to meet to list your home? Does 4 o'clock this afternoon work, or is 5 o'clock better? We're commanding them that they're going to list their home. So we're unconsciously embedding it in their mind. The next one, because the virtual showings on your condo haven't yielded an offer, don't you think we should reduce the price now so you sell before more competition enters the market? So I'm emphasizing these so that you guys can get the hang of it. Remember, when you're doing your homework, see how they're written? ... list your home ... and use those analogical markings. So we'll do questions and answers in a moment. We'll stay on for a couple moments afterwards. Want to go over your growth work with you so that you have clarity, because remember, as we know from Bold, clarity is power. So a couple things for our growth work this week. Over the next week, I'm going to ask you to pay specific attention to the people around you and listen as they speak again. And this time you're going to be listening for their preferential, their preferential identification system, their VAK. Are they an auditory? Are they a visual? Are they a kinesthetic? How are they speaking? Mark it down. If you have a spouse, if you have your kids, write down what their preferential learning style is. Do they like using auditory? Do they like sight? Do they like sound? That's going to up your communication with them. And begin using keyword backtracking, using the words that they relate to. And then you're going to write 2 phrases for each VAK daily, Monday through Friday, 2 phrases. So a collective of 10 sentences for each style. Remember, use different words. And use words that you're going to use, though. Don't write some big fancy sentence that you're never going to say. If you wouldn't verbally say it, don't write it. Make things that you're make sentences, make homework, make your growth work, things that you're actually going to use. So, and when you do it, you're going to identify, you're going to say like V, I see what you mean. A, how do you hear how that makes sense? K, can you wrap your arms around that? So you're identifying visual, audio, kinesthetic, right? The next thing we're going to do as a growth work, and this is all in your workbook again, is you're going to write a total of 5 embedded command sentences per day around these topics. The topics are in your book too: closing for an appointment while prospecting in the time of COVID, signing a listing and or a buyer agreement, writing a contract, negotiating an offer, and then a non-business situation. Why? Because this doesn't live in isolation. This isn't just business language. This is real life language. Use embedded commands at least 10 times intentionally every day. in a conversation with a client, a coworker, somebody in your family, and continue to share your sentences on our Facebook page, in, with people around you, with your partner, etc. And know this, it's 3:00 Central Time. Congratulations. You are halfway through your language of sales journey. And if you're thinking, man, this is a lot of work, you're right. You're learning a new language and it takes a lot of practice. Great job. Keep up the great work. Check the Facebook page tomorrow for when our office hours will be in the next week before our next class. And do not hesitate to post anything in there that you'd like me to take a look at. If you have any questions, I'll stay on now for a moment. We've got about 5 minutes, and after that, we'll call it a day. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. Have a great week, and congratulations on being halfway through. Anybody, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand, you can come off mute, or you can type in the box.
So I can put it in my schedule,
Yes,
like
Stephen.
I did last
Yeah.
time. This is
Yeah.
Steve up in Minnesota, and yes, it is
Yeah.
9 degrees below zero.
I'm sorry.
When are the Facebook hours so I can just put it in my schedule?
You know what? Due to something else, we had to take tomorrow's out. We'll get you by tomorrow, Steve. We'll get you when we'll have 2 next week, and we'll let you know when they are.
Okay,
But I
thank
don't
you.
know that right now. You're welcome. Janet, you
Excellent.
raised your hand. What's up?
I'm just thinking on the printed stuff, I've been writing notes and if I've had an embedded command, I've started them on a separate line. But I've never done the ellipses and the capitalize. It seems like overkill to me, but people really don't notice that.
Well, it's written for you practicing and learning. That's a great clarification. And I'm going to ask
okay.
you, bring that up at the beginning of our next session, because
Okay.
I want to make sure that that's clarified. Because if you're texting someone and you write ... sign the listing agreement now or meet now, they're going to go, what the heck? Why is she yelling
Well,
at me?
that's what I thought you were saying.
Yes.
And
No,
so, yeah.
that is a great question. Please bring that up at the beginning of our next session, or ask it in the Facebook chat. If you ask it in the Facebook room, I can also reference it back next week. That is a great question. Now, there are times, I will be 100% honest. If I'm writing an email and I want to emphasize something, I may do that.
Right.
Or I may do the ... and I may do it because I want to emphasize that point, or maybe I'll underline that point because it's visually going to draw their attention to it. But that is a great question.
Okay.
Okay. So a couple more minutes. Anybody else have any questions? If not, if you do, yes, Jan, is it Jan? Jan in Northern Virginia? Yon? Sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. You need to unmute. You should be able to unmute. Because we've clicked on ask you to unmute, but I can't control that. I can only ask you to unmute. I can't actually unmute you. Okay, and you said you can't unmute, so I don't know whether that's a physical impossibility, or yeah, can you type your question? If not, we can let you know via the Facebook group, ask your question there, etc. All right, everybody, have a terrific week. Go enjoy yourselves. Pay attention to people's VAK. This can be one of the most fun things that we actually do in this class, listening to how everyone else prefers to communicate. Have yourselves a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.